All right, Tom. So I call the meeting to order with a roll call, please.
Sharon that happens out here. Here.
Alderperson Barbara Dorr.
Here.
David Jim Here. Unsure the borrowers are restraining access.
Here.
And Melanie Parma asking to be excused.
That's a motion to approve the agenda, please.
Second.
Jim and Alder North. All in favor, sing by saying aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. So the first thing is a public hearing regarding the changes to KID 5, East and West Downtown, KID 7, Ashland Avenue and Lombardi Avenue corridor, KID 8, Henry and Morrow Street, KID 9, State Highway 54/57 Business Park, KID 12, I-43 Commercial Development, KID 13, Downtown Redevelopment, KID 14, Broadway Redevelopment, KID 17, 900 Black North Broadway, KID 22, the Shipyard, KID 23, Legends District, in the city of Green Bay. So we're going to handle all the public hearing, all changes at one time. So first thing, is there anybody that would like to make a comment on any of these changes? Please.
I'd like to make a comment on TID 9.
Good night. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, let's put it up.
Can I go or?
Oh, yeah, please, go up there, please. Yeah, name and address.
My name is Shannon Madkin. My address is 1005 South Clay Street, Green Bay, Wisconsin, 54301. I'm here today representing 7180 and Scott Development, which are two significant landowners that are part of University Heights, which is the TID 9 district proposed to be shut down. A little about TID 9, it was created to expand the city's interest in the east side of Green Bay. This TID is unique in that it involves agreements with both the town of Scott and annexing landowners. Green Bay and the town of Scott entered into a joint border agreement to allow the town of Scott access to infrastructure in exchange for land annexation. Water was promised to the town of Scott within 7 years of that agreement. We are now past the 7-year mark, and the city of Green Bay has not fulfilled that. Landowners that annexed were promised help from the city to create a business park, University Heights. The boundary agreements and the developers' agreements show the obligations that the city of Green Bay has to the landowners and the town for their annexation. The annexation and implementation of TID 9 took place just before the 2008 recession. Bad timing and a slow economy does not dismiss agreements though. TID 9 should not be closed down, but rather extended to allow for these promises to be fulfilled between the parties affected. University Heights is one of the only areas in Green Bay that still offers a substantial plots of land for large industrial or manufacturing companies, much like Robinson Metal, which I heard was being discussed prior to the start of the meeting. Without this TIF or the infrastructure, University Heights will lose all potential development. These businesses will look at neighboring villages, towns, or cities that can offer both the land and assistance with infrastructure. Long-term, TIFs are a positive way to make sure businesses expand in the city of Green Bay. Once developed, TIF districts offer a substantial increase in property tax revenue that can be used however the city likes. A developed TIF district also creates more jobs and brings more residents to the area for those jobs. Anyone looking at this from a county's perspective or thinking short term may not mind if a business builds elsewhere, as TIFs can create perceived tax revenue issues for local governments. We as a city, though, should be thinking long-term and about our own city needs. Keeping TID 9 open cost the taxpayers nothing. It was managed carefully during the recession and was not put in the negative because of overspending on infrastructure. It is my understanding that the negative balance of around $1.6 million was essentially the result of the City of Green Bay's own land purchase within University Heights. Closing down this TID does not make that debt disappear, but it does make it almost impossible for the land to be developed and that debt to be paid back to the taxpayers of Green Bay. Now that the economy is doing well, the City of Green Bay should be focusing on University Heights. In 5 years, almost no marketing has been done on University Heights. During those years, the city focused instead on other business parks within Green Bay. Those parks are near capacity now though, and instead of filling in environmentally sensitive areas to expand them, which I know is what is currently being researched and proposed, the city should be working to grow University Heights and the land that is readily available out there. They should be using the TID to bring in businesses so they can meet the obligations they committed to when they entered joint agreements with landowners and the town of Scott. In closing, I'd like to ask, has anyone reviewed all of the agreements made related to that area? And has anyone reviewed how the City of Green Bay will meet and fund those agreements without TID 9? We are one of the landowners in the area. No one has talked to us as to how the City of Green Bay will fulfill their obligations. In fact, had I not read the meeting minutes, I would know nothing about the proposed TID 9 closure. Further review of city and town minutes do not show the issues I've mentioned as being resolved. I believe the decision to close TID 9 should be tabled until after those issues are resolved. Thank you.
Any other comments in regard to any of these kids?
Is it appropriate for me to make comments now, or when we discuss TID 9, when we get to it?
We should probably handle it under the action items, just let the public speak.
Okay.
Any other
TID
comments?
23?
Yes, please.
TID 23?
Yes, please.
My name is Ron Smits, 3777 Mighty Oak Trail, Howard, Wisconsin. I would like to request my property at 913 Lombardi Avenue, tax parcel 1-1841E1, and 1920 Bart Star Drive, tax parcel 1-1841E, not be labeled as a blighted property, but remain included in the TID district.
Any other comments or questions with regard to any of the kids? If not, we shall consider the public hearing closed. All right. I think it.
I'll just ask 2 more times.
Okay.
Ask two more.
Okay. Any other questions or comments with regard to the TID hearing, public hearing? Any other questions or comments in regard to the TID public hearing? If not, we shall consider the public hearing closed. And before we get into discussion on each one of the TIDs, we got another regular business that we're going to cover. A consideration of possible action on a development agreement with Neighborhood Works Green Bay for a property located at 505 5th Street, parcel 2-879. Ken?
All right, quick one here for you today. So, property located at 505 5th Street. We already purchased this property in 2018 for $8,800. We demolished the property on site. It was a blighted property, hadn't been occupied for quite some time. The owner was looking to get out of it. We ended up purchasing it last year. Neighborhood Works Green Bay submitted for our New Homes in Your Neighborhood program. At this time, they're requesting a grant of $20,000 to be used alongside the Adopt a Home program to build a new single-family home on that site. The plan that I passed out here today was they sent that today as an update for the actual plan that will be going on the site. When they submitted, they had their proposal, which was what was in the packet, of proper design that they used on other sites successfully. Let's see, so they're requesting the $20,000 grant, and that number could come down a bit depending on the donor funding for the adopt-a-home portion of the program. So staff is looking for approval on the new homes in your neighborhood development at 505 5th Street.
And that would be your recommendation?
That is our recommendation, yes.
And we've got these dollars already allocated in our plan, don't we? I mean, as far as this year goes.
Correct. Yep, so this is both in our neighborhood enhancement funds. We have funds allocated for this, but then this will also go towards our shipyard allocations.
I would move to approve it.
And I'll second.
Okay, moved by Alerdorf, second by Kathy. Any questions or comments? If not, we shall vote. Maybe? Except that's to come up. Oh, there it is. Good. Thank you.
All right, we have 5 to 1. The one abstaining.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Perfect.
Everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Now, the regular business, we have 3 items related to all these kids. At the July meeting, we probably spent 45 minutes to an hour going over each one. So it's up to the committee, but we can either do each one individually or make comments or suggestions as a group. Like for instance, we should definitely be addressing number 8, which was kid 9, in regard to how we should proceed. Kevin, thoughts? And I guess that's number 8 for sure. Let's do number 8.
Sure. And if you want, if we can go through and pull out and just, if you want to discuss them, excuse me, suspend the rule and put them all on the table at once to discuss, and then we can kind of go back and forth. I think important to the discussion for TID 9 is looking at, okay, how are we going to close it?
Right.
The other TIDs.
Yeah.
I think they're looking at how they're all integrated. So I would recommend suspending the rules, put them all on the table at once, and then we can decide if you'd like to pull any out separately. I think that's okay to do.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to suspend the rules and run them all at once with specific comments. All in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Rules suspended.
Sure.
Okay, so, like I said, we spent quite a bit of time at our July meeting, so we should talk about any specific comments, suggestions, or whatever in regard to any of these. And again, I definitely want to talk about number 8 in regard to kid 9.
Yeah, it's number 9.
Well, it's kid 9, it's 8 on the agenda item, I'm sorry, Jim.
No,
No,
it's number 9.
It got moved.
It got
After we
moved
added
after
the,
you
yeah.
printed the agenda.
Oh,
That is the public hearing notice,
gotcha.
which
Yeah.
numbers them all, and then so
All right.
they all got bumped down. So you want to talk about University Heights
Yes,
first?
please.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I was contacted, because this is in my district, by not this particular landowner, but by someone else that lives there. And she had a lot of questions. We talked a lot, and she was going to come, but went to a meeting yesterday and felt she'd gotten her answers. So she seems satisfied, but just to bring up the things that she talked about, I guess I do want to know, is there any opportunity to look at developing this more, and why we would want to close this right now, hearing these are the same concerns that I heard. But somehow she got her answers yesterday. So what did she hear yesterday that satisfied her?
Sure. So I believe you're referring to Mrs. Peters?
Yes,
Yes.
I am.
So what we talked about yesterday is the difference between the University Heights, like Business Park, Business Center, and then this particular tax increment district. University Heights is a little bit different, unlike I-43, when the city bought a lot of land and we put a planned unit development over all of it, to basically guide and then help out with design criteria to make sure it looks the way that it did. In the same way, we have planned unit development that kind of encompasses the University Heights area, which is more from a land use, saying, okay, here's the types of land use we want to see out here, here's restrictions on design and other things. That's staying in place, that's not changing. What we are looking at is the specific tax increment district that was created out there in the same time that this PUD was created. And basically, this is the area east of 57 and then along 54 Algoma Road. I think in terms of timing, probably one of the worst times to create a tax increment district and spend money, but I mean, people were predicting recessions and be in different business, but it is what it is. And the city has spent money. They spent money on infrastructure, and they spent money on land acquisition. What we have done is, kind of after the recession, this area was really targeted for along 57 and 54, a lot of big box retail development, and then further to the east, more commercial type development, or I'm sorry, more industrial type development like manufacturing. As we all know, since the recession, I mean, retail has been remarkably different. Population growth has slowed out there. I think one of the things we were also looking at, if you look at the town of Scott and their population, what it was, it was growing by 4, 5, 6% annually prior to that. Since then, it's been closer to what the city is, and that's a percent or less. So the population, the rooftops weren't out there for the commercial development, and then the retail world, was upside down. So one of the things that we've looked at is, in addition to commercial aspect of, all right, manufacturing parcels. Manufacturing is still growing, and we don't have a lot of big parcels in the city. And so what we have done in terms of our efforts, when generally we get referrals through the Chamber, or Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, or New North, basically site selectors approach these regional organizations, say, look, I'm looking for sites in the area, and they need to have certain facilities. Sometimes it's just raw land, sometimes they want an existing building, and so we submit into those, or when clients come talk directly to us, we bring them out and show them parcels that are available out here. There's some limitations with our parcel. It doesn't have the direct access to 54. It's a state highway, and there's controlling on the number of access points. So it's a challenge. As said at the public hearing, there's infrastructure limitations. There's not water fully out to all of this area. She is correct. And one of the things we've talked about in those discussions is, look, for a project, we can complete the infrastructure cost to make the project happen and bring water out there and put in the access points and get that infrastructure so you can have a fully developed site. But we haven't gotten a project that far as far as committing to acquiring land or actually building and doing the project. There's been, I think there's a perception issue that this is too far out there. And they'd rather be in I-43, even though if you measure it and access from a 4-lane highway to the very far east side of I-43, like Nature's Way, it's probably a lot further than a 4-lane highway is out here, but I think that's a perception issue that we're trying to push past. But we haven't gotten anyone to move forward, and the claim hasn't been about the infrastructure, it's been just like this isn't the right site for us. And so to kind of discuss why we're recommending the closure of this tax increment district, it is bleeding. And that is, it's continuing to go further into debt. If we go looking, and this is when we talk about the TID reports, year-end 2018. So we started this year in the hole, almost $1.5 million. With that, there has been some development out there, has created some increment. But when you look at what we have to pay in terms of our administration fees, the DOR, and the debt that we have on infrastructure and land purchases, we're taking in $190 and we're spending $230. And so this is going to go on for a few more years until the TID terminates. Its mandatory termination date is in 2026. So we're basically saying, look, if we continue to keep it open, it's just going to get further and further into the hole. If a TID closes with a negative balance, there's two options for filling the hole. The option that we're talking about here is to make some allocations from other tax increment districts to take surplus in those funds and plug the hole here. If we don't do that, then it becomes the responsibility of the municipality. So the city would have to inherit the debt and figure out a way to, we basically have to bond to repay the debt for what's been outstanding here. So part of the reason that we're looking at this closure is because we believe, and this is how it gets tied into the closure of TID 7, the closure of TID 8, the closure of TID 12, is that we have sufficient funds in there to be able to shut 9 down and keep it from impacting the tax levy in the city of Green Bay.
What does it do to the people, the landowners out there? I mean, tell me what their hope for the future could be.
Sure. So I think what we would do is we would look if there's a project that comes through, like in other areas, we would create a new tax increment district at the time to help incent that future development. I think one of the things that we've tried to do, and that's why we're talking about 22 and 23 today, is they're paralleled with projects in terms of having things, right, take maximum advantage of the life of the TID. I think, you know, if we start a tax increment district today or this year, and we don't get development for 5-10 years, I mean, these industrial TIDs are only, 20 years long. So, we lose that time and lose the ability to make an incentive. So it's better if we pair it with an incentive. And the second part is by closing this down using money from the other tax increment districts, we're going to take care of the infrastructure piece, and we can better project when projects are coming through the funds that they have to finish up the infrastructure pieces out there with the water and the road access and those other types of things. So in terms of closing this tax increment down, we will still continue to market this as available land for future development. And if a project decides to move forward, we've talked about a lot of these, right? They move forward, speculated on the condition that the city is going to create a new tax increment district to help finance it.
So when the landowner was speaking, I heard about promises the city made to do certain things. And so what happens with those promises?
So we've had some discussions with the town of Scott in terms of that agreement. We have met our senior staff and our city attorney with representatives for the town of Scott, and we're working through those right now. I'll say we're probably negotiating through those right now, and so probably
Can't talk about that.
correct.
How many acres did the city of Green Bay actually own in that TID?
Oh, a few hundred. The total land area in here.
Right.
I have to get the data on that.
So that's all-
It's a few hundred.
Okay, so that's all city property right there.
Correct, so that was traded, or basically came from the town
I
of
remember.
Scott.
Yeah, I remember.
So if I were a landowner out there with concerns, what would you recommend my next step be if I were sitting out in the audience right now? What should I do to help me understand completely what's happening?
Sure. I think in terms of if there is concerns in terms of the limitation on infrastructure right now for the availability, if the lack of infrastructure is limiting a property owner's ability to conduct business right now or to potentially develop it, then they should come talk to our office and talk to the city to say, look, I want to do this with my property, but the city hasn't done this, or I need the city to do that in order for us to then figure out a way to do it. I think one of the things we've talked about is right now, just because of the financial situation, to continue to keep putting in infrastructure without any imminent development is not fiscally prudent. But if there is a project or there is something that could help come through and provide property tax increment to do it, then we can think differently about it. And so that's really kind of project-based. I think I saw Wendy Townsend from our office. I know she's done a lot of work with business retention, recruitment. She can probably attest to her marketing efforts out there. I don't know how many dozens of clients you've worked with out there, and they just choose to go somewhere else, and it doesn't take a step forward. But I will say, just in terms of, we do have that in our rotation of, parcels that we offer. I can't make somebody develop somewhere,
Right.
and
Right.
I can try and incentivize someone, but ultimately it's the business owner that makes a decision where they want to acquire that land.
Thank you for the explanation.
Plus, I think our basic philosophy on tips have changed a little bit, where before we do a lot of upfront money and sometimes recover and sometimes not. Now it's more pay as you go. And as the project comes in, we will make that investment, just a better business model.
Correct. We're going to challenge that business model today with the shipyard tip, because we are going to allocate some funds up front. I think with that, it's predicated on some more real development or some projects
Right.
coming down the line. It's one of the more aggressive tips, and I'll get into why I think it's the right approach for that particular district. But yes, you're correct in terms of the last ones we've created for East University Avenue, East Town, Whitney, Green Bay Packaging.
Yes.
Those have all been primarily structured pay as you go.
Has the GM from Green Bay Water been involved in those
Yes.
negotiations? I can understand what's going on here, but we've had one of the best recoveries ever, and we haven't found property to develop in that TIF during an excellent recovery. I don't know when we will. That being said, my mind was exactly where you mentioned, Kevin, is that if a developer comes along and wants to do something there, create another TIF.
Right.
Very project specific,
Right.
if that's what we need to do, and then incorporate the things that perhaps haven't gotten done thus far in the existing TIF. If I'm a Green Bay city taxpayer, this is the best bailout ever, because it doesn't go on your tax bill as a resident, because it's being picked up by the other TIF district surpluses, so.
If you approve those other allocations.
If we approve, yeah, I mean,
That's proposed.
going full circle, I think it makes a lot of sense to do that.
And we wouldn't, I don't see any reason why we'd market it any less as a result of this. We still want that to happen.
Yeah, Wendy's not going
Wendy's
to.
not going to, she's going to market this before.
So it's maybe the end of this one, but it's not the end of a plan, if there is something.
No, I think in terms of the planning and development, if anything, we maybe revisit and change out some of the commercial for some maybe more mixed use or light manufacturing out there to reflect the market. But I think in terms of, the availability of large parcels is rare within city
Yes.
borders, and we
Yes.
continue to want to see that type of development in that area.
Yes, please.
One last question. And we had talked about this when we make amendments to different TIDs and things like that, but, so we can close one and then reopen one in the same type of corridor, or does it have to be?
Do it exactly the same.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, it's depending how you create it, yes.
okay. I just didn't know what the rules and regs.
Yep. Yeah, you can make one that looked exactly the same borders and boundaries.
The big deal here is
Thanks.
the other kids are going to help bail this one out.
That's my
So
concern.
that is, and then the city we're not on hook with funds we don't really have to
Mhm.
bond for them to get built up.
Okay, yes.
I did want to, if it's okay, jump in the new creation. I know there's some interested parties here. Want to hear just about 14. I'm sorry, TID 14, which would probably be number.
No, it is 14.
It is, it happens to be
14.
14.
Yeah, I was looking at the previous agenda, sorry. Okay, yeah.
About two actions for this tax increment district, a territory amendment and a standard extension. TID 14 is North Broadway redevelopment. So basically, it's north of Dousman, east of Broadway to the railroad tracks. Generally, right, this has been the rail yard redevelopment, which is one of the things that we'd like to propose. You can actually rename the TID, and so I think part of the update here is to rename the project plan the rail yard, because that's what it is and that's what it's become.
Sure.
So these nebulous names, we didn't really know what it was when we created it. But we would like to add 4 additional parcels. These actually will be added as one parcel because of January 1st of this year, it was one parcel. It's basically a strip of land right to the east of the existing tax increment district. CN owned this parcel. We sold it to the developer and owner of adjacent properties. Again, I don't know how CN ever sold something, which is amazing, but they sold it. It's gone. But it's not in the tax increment district. No, they were reasonable. So with that, we would like to, because there are projects proposed that overlap and go onto this property, to add these properties in. We've considered them all blighted because they're former rail, not at their highest and best use. Likely actually found environmental contamination on it. And they all are coming in with a base value of 0. So there's no value on them to begin, so they will come in with 0. So to have the territory amendment that would add these parcels in, so it basically includes the new projects. And then the second is for an extension or request for a standard extension. State law allows you to extend tax increment districts for 3 years. Part of the reason, a few reasons for asking. One, really the biggest one is post-Walmart, we'll call it. There was a lot of time where this property was off the tax rolls. When on Broadway basically defaulted on their note, the bank came to the city as the guarantor and said, look, we're going to pay up on the note. The city in return said, look, we're going to pay up on it, we want the property.
Yes.
So the Redevelopment Authority acquired it, and basically we got 2 years where we just basically wiped all the increment out. Now, there wasn't a ton north of Kellogg, but we wiped it out, and it was on paying any taxes for 2 years. And so with that, combined with now putting in the infrastructure, the cost of construction haven't gotten any cheaper since we started to provide some estimates for putting that in. We think we would need the 3 extra years to be able to have enough increment to successfully make sure that we pay back to get that on. And then the third would be with the affordable housing project with TWG Development. Part of their development agreement was looked at the assumption that we would extend the TID. Again, I think one of our objectives is to get affordable housing into the community in a way that to help make the numbers work, and also just to fit in with loan terms instead of 12 years, 15 years, to put the financing together, to have the 3 extra years to be able for them to get the financing package to move forward with that project. So time off the tax rolls, the additional costs of infrastructure, and the TWG agreement are reasons that we believe that the project cost cannot be repaid within the allotted time, and thus would ask for the extension for 3 years. So instead of closing in 2033, it will close in 2036.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
So
Yes, please.
you said that the land is contaminated?
Yes.
So part of it is, and you're talking about putting housing on it, right?
So, yeah,
Tell me about that.
yep. So most of the contamination is historical fill. It's basically, right, we had a lot of hills and valleys in this area, and we just brought in whatever dirt we had and just dumped it in the way. Majority of anything, we've been working very closely with the DNR, and there's certain standards for, all right, how do you remediate the area? And when you have residences or businesses, there's different levels of acceptable contamination. So we've been working with them to make sure that those are within the legal limits or under in terms of what's required. The second is, for most of this stuff, it's petroleum, and so we need to cap it and basically prevent human contact. So generally, anywhere from 18 inches to 3 feet of fill and clay to be between somebody and where those contaminants are. They just stay in the ground and naturally over time will decompose. Or in some cases, there's a few areas where it might be too saturated that it would have to be hauled away to an landfill. We've done, I don't know if Matt is here, very close coordination with DNR and consultant on the project, our environmental consultant, Stantec, and working to make sure that's going to be remediated to the appropriate standards.
Thank you.
Sure.
Kevin, that remediation, is it in the territory amendment?
So it's all over, but yes, part of it would be also in the added territory as well. Up on the very northeast part where you see the parcel ending in 77 and 78, that's where the stormwater pond is being dug out, and there was some contamination in that area.
So TIF expenses will go up because of the remediation?
Correct.
And then is this our first territory amendment for this?
Yes, this
So we
is
have-
not, this was created in 2006, and there's been no changes since it was created.
So we have 3 left.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And what is 51766? Who's that?
That's Heddletown Brewing.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that
And
is.
they're not in
that
the
is
TIF?
Correct.
Oh.
Kevin, could you address the gentleman's concern that I spoke earlier about the blighted, you need to like the word blighted?
That was
Sure.
in this.
Not this one, that's
This
in
was
23.
That's 23.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm comfortable with this one. I'm comfortable with 14.
Okay, so let's jump down then to 23.
Yeah, please.
So 23, which is agenda item,
Should be 23,
right, 18.
Okay.
Yep. We're actually not looking at future. Would be to establish a new tax increment district down in the Legends District. This is an area, and we'll go back and talk about, we're looking to close down an existing TID 7, already national corridors. This is a new TID that would be created to facilitate redevelopment, one of the Legacy Hotel, former Red
Right.
Park Steakhouse.
Right.
And then also it includes parcels that were identified in the Legends District redevelopment plan. Primarily a lot of surface parking that could have a higher and better use on it. So the projects specifically identified on that were at the Badger State Brewing / Hudson Shark property, the Stadium View parking lot, and then the White Star parcels down on Canandaigua. And so with that, we've created this district as a blight district. Given the condition of some of the parcels, given the condition of some of the surface treatments for parking, and just given the notion that they are not at their highest and best use, considering everything else that is going on around there, just to the west and to the south. So with that, the gentleman, Mr. Smits, who spoke earlier, those parcels are these parcels up in here. And so we included them in the tax increment district. One, from a land use perspective, it's primarily surface parking, and it's at a corner, gateway corner to the district. We felt there could be a higher and better use. They were identified as blighted, not necessarily the structure in the corner of Lombardi, but the parcel to the south in terms of the condition of the structure that's there and the parking lot. In terms of, we classified 100% of the parcels in this district as blight. If the committee wished to remove those parcels from the blighted condition per the gentleman's request, we would still be more than above the 50% threshold for blight to create this district. And just from a staff perspective, would not have an issue with those.
And From landowner's perspective, it's their advantage to be in this TIF.
Yeah, I think, you know, in terms of, right, when you create a tax increment district, as a property owner, you're not gonna know the difference.
Right.
Because you're not gonna see a change in taxes or anything, but
Right.
you will be able to market it.
Absolutely.
In terms of, look, if somebody wants to, if the current owner or a future owner wants to redevelopment, there's a potential that incentive could be involved. You know, with that, if they were not in the tax increment district now, I know we discussed at the staff level, including the undeveloped Tundra Lodge parcels. But again, just in terms of timing, really didn't feel it was appropriate at this point. If you took the parcels out entirely, they could come back in at the future, but right now there's a process to that. So per Mr. Smith's request, you know, if you would like to retain them in without the blight designation, staff would be acceptable.
And that's definitely what the landowner would like, right, Mr. Smith?
Correct.
And just for my own.
Yes.
Whether a parcel is deemed as blighted or not, what's the difference? If it's in the TID,
Right.
and I understand, right, a certain percentage of the property has to be deemed, right, as blighted for it to be able to create as a TID. What's the difference, say, for the property owner in this case, if my property is designated as blighted or not, but still in the TID?
Sure. So if your property is blighted, from a city perspective, if it's identified as blighted, there's some advantages to the city if we were ever to acquire that property, because we said it's blighted, and if we identified it with environmental contamination, there's some benefits to us when it comes to remediating and compliance, just as far as getting clearance with the DNR, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
pretty much it.
I'm asking my brownfields expert here. The piece from a landowner perspective, and this goes back to property rights. So the city can condemn property, right? We have that authority to condemn property. We have the authority to condemn blighted property and non-blighted property. Where there's a subtle difference, goes back to that Supreme Court case, Kelo versus New London. And basically it said in there that a city could condemn any type of property, and in that case, turn it around for private benefit or turn it around for economic development. It didn't have to be for like streets or parks. They could actually condemn it and then give it to a private developer. So the state of Wisconsin passed some legislation and said that if you are a non-blighted property, the municipality cannot come in and condemn you for economic development. They can still condemn you for a street, park, anything that's public benefit in there, but they cannot do it for a private use. If they're blighted, they can still do that. So, I mean, there is a distinction. Bigger picture, I'll defer to the attorney on this. The city doesn't have any plans for condemnation in this area. I mean, we generally have not in any of our tax increment districts. I mean, it's a right that we're granted, but we don't anticipate having to use it for anything in this area. But it's a little bit of difference. I'd probably like to speak as the attorney.
No, you're doing a great job.
Unfinished category.
Okay. So then there would be, an appropriate motion might be to
Honor.
the request of and remove
The landowner.
those two properties,
Yep, and I think.
or redesignate them as non-blighted.
Non-blighted.
Correct, yep.
To redesignate the two properties. I don't know the exact names of the properties.
We got them on the
You got it.
record, but I
You got it.
know what they are. Yeah, they were mentioned here, so we'll take those two out.
We'll take those. I
That's a
would-
motion.
That's a motion.
Okay.
But is that to keep them in the TID? So
Oh, yeah.
they be non-blighted, but in the TID?
Yes.
I believe that's what.
That's what you asked
That's what that would be my motion.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Kathy?
So, for
Please.
discussion, I just want to reiterate the point that even with the removal of those properties, it wouldn't affect the qualification of the percent of blight required for the district.
Correct.
Right.
It's still based on land area, it'd be over 90%.
Right.
But that doesn't always happen when you designate blighted property. Because I recall other public hearings where we've had people protest calling their property blighted, and in some cases, we would refuse to do that because it would affect the future building. In this case, it shouldn't.
No, it will not.
Well, any other discussion or comments? I'm not sure, are we going to do a vote online, or, okay? Then we will vote.
This is voting on the amendment.
Amendment.
Yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
Unanimously approved.
Okay, so, thank you.
Thank you.
So as long as we're on 23, why don't I just finish up a little bit, just discussion. Again, I said the purpose of this is really to facilitate higher and better use of a lot of surface parking in this area. I think in the project plan, we identified 4 different catalyst redevelopment sites. As mentioned, currently undergoing the Legacy Hotel and the Old Breath Bar Steakhouse, the parking lot, area of the Hudson Sharp Building, Dr. State Brewing, the White Star parcels, which is basically intersection of Canandaigua and Reggie Whiteway and Bart Star, that area there, and then the Stadium View parking lot. Based on that, we structured the Legacy Hotel as a pay-go, and would propose doing the same types of things in this area. Based on there's most of the infrastructure in here already, so don't anticipate a lot of heavy project costs. In there's some budgeted kind of on the back end, like we're going to do in TID 7, which I'm talking about. So just in terms of like the pro forma, there's a little in with some of our admin costs eventually, but this looks at over time. Again, this would vary depending on the timing of the project and the amount of the incentive, but should be a very healthy TID in terms of performing based on some of those assumptions.
We have a good start, a good anchor.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
the Legacy Hotel project will be great for that area, based on what's just going on. The market is
Absolutely.
very hot, and I anticipate we'll probably see the rest of that develop probably sooner than.
Absolutely. Good. Which one of us do we want to talk about next? Did you say 7? Or did you say-
I mean, we can go back to the beginning and make sure we get all those items on the corner. All right. All right. Oh, probably should start with TID 5. So TID 5 is our east and west downtown. It's one of our larger tax increment districts, basically spanning both sides of the river. It's one of the older ones, created in 2000. This has had 2 amendments to it in 2004 and in 2006. Territory was added to it. What we're proposing today is a territory amendment to actually subtract territory. With the new tax increment district 22 for the shipyard, there's going to be some overlap with the parcels in State 5. We feel that we can remove those parcels, given there is not a ton of value to them, or I should say not a ton of incremental value to them. And it will not impact the long-term projections in terms of creating revenue sufficient to pay the cost in that area. And so also from a finance perspective and administration perspective, to make Director Helm's job a little easier, it's always usually better to have one TID layer instead of timing, right, base value from 2000, base value from 2019. And so with that, in your packet was proposed the list of parcels that we're proposing to remove. This map just kind of shows the overlap. The ones that are yellow and have the pattern behind would be the ones that would be removed from 5 because they're becoming part of TID 22. So just with that, and I think back to a question about are there any parcels that won't be in a TID moving forward? The ones that won't be in, take that back, these will still remain in TID 5, but some of these up here will not go into the new tax increment district. So we may have to just double check that one parcel up on the left may also have to get removed, just because you have to have a contiguous territory. But again, there's not a lot of value from the base to what it is now, so there's not a lot of incremental property taxes coming in now to help.
Right.
So we would recommend removing the parcels that were presented in the packet.
When we do these, are we going to do these each individually? Because if we are, we maybe should do them as we
Sure.
talk about them. But if we could just take them as a lump sum, I don't know.
Right, they're all listed individually because we have to have individual resolutions for all of them.
Okay.
But with that, I think Robert's rules allows you to suspend and take more than one at once. If you want to take them all together, all the recommendations.
I was just curious, I hate to go
Yeah.
off one, if we have to come back to it again, and then vote, but legal?
You can speak, you've already suspended the rules to take them all up at one
Right.
time.
With the
Yes.
hearing, okay, I thought that was just.
No, after the hearing. We did that after the
Yeah,
We
hearing.
you guys
did.
decided to take
Okay.
them all up. And so, once you finish your discussions, you can decide to suspend the rules again, to take
Right.
them all up with one roll. We'll
Got it.
call for it essentially.
Okay, we can just make amendments along the way if
Correct.
we
Yep.
want.
Which would be, yes.
All right, TID 7, this goes back down to the Legends District area. This was created in 2002, primarily to help incentivize the development of the Denver Lodge. Since then, we haven't had a whole lot of additional projects with that. And so what we're looking at is proposing three things. One is to look at doing an affordable housing resolution. I'm sorry, an allocation amendment, first to allocate some funds to help close TID 9, and then an affordable housing resolution to put funding into a housing fund for the city. And then the third would be a termination resolution. So basically winding this one down. And here's what we have projected based on, and these are estimated numbers, but our starting balance this year. Public expenses, the last thing that we'd like to accomplish on the project plan is putting sidewalks in that area. As you know, it gets very crowded on there on event days, both at Lambeau and the Resch. And that's been a complaint from some of the business owners. So we were looking at spending the remaining funds on putting in sidewalks and the lighting just to enhance pedestrian accommodations through that area. With that, we'll have an ending balance of about $450 with the increment coming in 2020. And after administration expenses, we'll have an escrow for development. There's still one PAYGO out there for Shore West. So we need to put that money, we still have a few more years coming, so we'll put that in escrow. Escrow the rest of the remaining debt payments for some previous infrastructure expenses. That is just basically debt service. It's not callable yet, so we just have to put some money aside to pay that out. But it may be callable, when did we say? Maybe in 2 years or 3 years? So that may be a little lower if we're able to, if it gets recalled and we can prepay. And then proposing $820,000 to go into TID 9 to help with that closure. All those expenses, project expenses, would balance out in the end of 2020. State statute allows you to keep, after all project costs have been paid off, allows you to keep a tax increment district open for a year and use all that increment for housing, of which 75% of that has to go to affordable housing. And so for this district, we would look at an increment of $740,000 to be placed in a housing fund. We're still kind of putting our arms around what we would use that money exactly for here, but I think really we've got some great programs in place. Our rehab program, our neighborhood enhancement program, helping with projects for affordable housing that aren't in tax increment districts. And so we'll have to put together some policies of how that gets spent. I'm guessing it's probably going to be like block grant enhancement. The city is going to approve a plan and RDA will probably approve projects as it comes through. So with that, have 2021 be the affordable housing year, then this will be fully closed out, terminated at the end of 2021, which is 8 years before its mandatory termination date of 2029.
So the 740 is the 75%?
No, that's the total fund, that's the total increment. Of that 740, 75% of it would have to be used on affordable housing.
And the remainder?
It has to be used on housing. And this can be done, the housing can be done anywhere in the municipality.
Not.
Anywhere in Green Bay?
Specific
Anywhere
district.
in the city.
Wow.
And If an allocation is made from this or any district to fund the debt from another district, is there a time frame on which that must be done?
Yes, so I think what we are proposing is that we would have these allocations just in terms of cash flow done in 2020. So that our 2019 taxes, we would get 2019 taxes due in 2020, and in 2020 we would have the cash to move over to close it out.
Okay.
So TID 8, we're looking at the same type of closure process. TID 8 is over on the near east side, Bergamoro area. And again, pretty successful project here, but really not a lot of other development that's been going on. From a financial perspective, we haven't had a lot of cost here, so we've had a lot of increment building up and have a very nice reserve of funding here. With that, we'll get some additional tax increment this year. Still a little bit of debt to pay off from the original project. Puts us at 1.9 million heading into 2020. Some additional tax increment. Again, same situation. There's some debt payments outstanding. We would escrow that amount and then look at an allocation amendment. We're estimating about $1.4 million would go to, $1.4 million to be allocated between TID 9 and then TID 17. TID 17 probably needs under $100,000, and we'll look at talking about that. Most of it would go to TID 9. With that then, keeping it open in 2021 for 1 year to put $290,000 into that affordable housing fund. Then everything would be paid off and terminated at the end of 2021.
Is this for Stillmakers?
Close. It's right across the street. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it still makes on Henry, so this is on the other, just to the east of it. Questions? Okay. So TID 9, we talked a little bit about this, and basically you're going to see in here the plan to close it down. Those allocations, we talked about cash flow coming in 2020. So in essence, we're about $1.5 million in the hole, and we have about another $1.5 million plus of outstanding obligations, debt service coming down the line. So it's going to take a lot to close this down. About 2.6 needs to be allocated, with the biggest chunk coming from 8, then from 7, then from TID 12. But we believe there's enough in there, in those tax increment districts, to be able to successfully close that down and prevent that from coming back to the taxpayers and coming back to the levy in the city. Good. So with that, if everything gets right side back up in 2020, that we should be able to close this down at the end of 2021.
Diane, what's the total levy for the city?
3 million?
So 2.6 is roughly 5%. So my property tax bill would go up 5% in order to pay off this debt if we didn't move the funding.
It should be over 30 cents per 100,000.
Or we won't be able to bond for equipment or streets, or, it's a significant impact.
Is there any timetable, Kevin, on the negotiations that are going on with the
Ball is in their court, I think I'll say, right? Is that fair? Yes. But we've had, I think, a little bit difficult, right, transition in the mayoral position. But that was one of the, within the first month, Mayor Genrick sat down and we had a discussion, and we've had ongoing discussions, but yeah, the ball's in their court right now.
And we're cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Great.
That was very good.
Great.
To 12. So this is item number 9. So here, same thing as 7 and 8, an allocation, affordable housing, and then a termination. TID 12, I-43, commercial development, basically our very successful business park in the far east side. What we'd like to do here is finalize some infrastructure improvements. We extended Erie Road, urbanized it down to here for Nature's Way, and then are planning to extend it all the way down to the border with the village of Bellevue. More importantly, we're bringing a huge sewer interceptor all the way down in here, which will basically allow capacity for all of this to develop, along with water. This is kind of end of the line in terms of water and sewer capacity. So we would like to use the funds that we have existing in that tax increment district to complete those improvements. One of the questions that came up during the review board yesterday is just, all right, we get a little better handle on what exactly those improvements are. These were estimated from Public Works, but I'm going to have, prior to the council resolution, just a little more detailed expense of what exactly we're doing in those areas.
Right.
And how it could potentially support development basically along the Erie and Mason Street corridors. We are in the process of looking at expanding the business park. Again, kind of like University Heights, the business park itself is what's covered under the planned development. That really only goes to about Erie Road right now, and so we're seeing should be extended further east, and if so, how far, and what land is potentially developable and for what uses out in this area. So in terms of cash flows, spending down on infrastructure, programming that most of that this year to get done in 2020. With that, we would look at, in 2020, again, there's a pretty healthy increment in here. The wild card in terms of, I guess, estimating future development expenses comes in 2021. That looks at the Nature's Way agreement, and that is predicated on Nature's Way getting a $15 million assessed value and the amount potentially that we could owe on the back end in terms of a pay-go over that term. Because they're still under construction, they won't be fully assessed until 1/1/20. And because it's by the state, it usually takes a little longer, and maybe potentially under that. But we won't know for sure, but because it's pay-go, that's the max amount that could potentially be. With that, also just trying to be conservative, I didn't even place a value on their increment. So even with that, we tried to estimate it in a way that most likely there's going to be a positive cash balance when this thing closes out. So that would have all project costs paid off in 2021. Then we would ask this to keep it open for 1 year, 2022. This would really enhance our housing fund by putting $2.2 million into that fund. And then it would be closed at the end of 22, which is 3 years before its mandatory term date of 2025. So even with that affordable housing extension, it's still going to close before it's scheduled to.
Good.
All right, TID 13, downtown redevelopment. TID 13 is basically the northern end of the central business district. It's created to facilitate development of Schreiber, KI expansion, Hotel Northland. And what we'd like to do propose here is a project plan amendment to specifically add the Associated Bank parking lot in this project plan. You could read the project plan and say that it's part of the project plan, but I think it's important just to be specific because it's not specifically within the boundaries of this TID. The state statute allows you to work on projects within a half-mile boundary, and it allows you to do infrastructure that supports the tax increment district. This was TID 11 that we shut down 2 years ago. Those parcels actually were in TID 11, and we're in there because we wanted future development, but obviously it wasn't worth saving TID 11 because that one was not performing, so we shut it down. So, I mean, we've talked about it before, so it was kind of a property or project of the tax increment district. And so we would recommend adding this as an eligible project cost or identified project cost into the project plan. I think we've talked about here, through our acquisition, our short-term strategy of having this as a parking asset. If you look at the additional employment that's been created downtown and long-term spaces, or I should say monthly leasing spaces, and then with the clock ticking on the Main Street ramp, in the short term, we need that flexibility in our spaces. But then a long term, obviously, our preference is for a development on site, which will have hopefully some good requests or proposals coming back to the PRD in a few months. So the recommendation here is to add this to the project. All right, we went through 14, territory amendment and extension. TID 17, this is North Broadway. We talked a little bit about this last year. Bringing it back because I think we're in a spot where we've got the exit strategy. This is a very small TID. It was done for a very specific project. That project did not meet their expectations in terms of the development agreement. So we are currently in litigation with them, hoping to recover some funds in terms of what, developer agreement, you say you're going to provide a certain value, and they did not hit that, so we're going after them for the difference in that value. With that, there's no other development that's really going to happen up here. It's developed, it's not really going to redevelop, and so we feel it's best just to terminate this TID. This proposes and terminating it with going back to having TID 8 allocate some funding to close the gap. This is where we're at right now. I mean, we can leave it open until 2035 and slowly it might get there and close down. But we would like to, based on the outcome of the court case, which we feel should be done in 2020, any outstanding balance, use an allocation to fill and just shut this one down. Okay. And then 22, shipyard. So shipyard, obviously a project we've talked about extensively, both from the shipyard itself to the neighborhood and the investment strategy and everything that we're looking at around there. I will attest that this is probably one of our more aggressive TIDs. I estimate it pretty conservatively in terms of stretching out the development, but one of the things that we had talked about initially and got the support, especially of our city council, is that to keep the shipyard project off the levy, that we needed development that was going to support that and creating this tax increment district. With that, it's a bigger trough than probably some of the other ones that we've talked about. With that, I think in terms of the estimated projects that we're looking at, we have some pretty, I feel, realistic values in terms of projects on one, the north side of the slip with Breakthrough, Badger Sheet Metal, the White Store, and some parcels that we own further down that would generate enough increment to pull us out. These assumptions don't call for any of other smaller projects or other improvements in the area. I mean, they're really just kind of relying on those few projects. And they also do include incentives in them as well. And so, just trying to put it out there is what could be the toughest scenario. With it, though, I think going back to our reason for doing this, the project plan, we went through and identified all these properties that are going in. It's going to be a blighted district. But of the 55 acres, the base value for this district is less than $3 million. There's a ton of property owned by us, owned by the school district, by the church, or it's surface parking. And there's just hasn't been a lot of development. I mean, 55 acres with only $3 million worth of value. I mean, it is probably the lowest per acre value we've got in the whole city. So in terms of a need for a shot in the arm and
Absolutely.
Investment, if there's any place in the city, this is it.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a goofy looking TID with this TID. This will be our tail TID because it's the railroads in there, and still have to talk with DOR about this because because it's not rail right-of-way, it's actually a parcel, and you have to include whole parcels in it, and this ridiculous parcel, it goes from like Arndt Street all the way down to, what is that, like 8th? Almost 9th. So it looks goofy,
It is what it is.
but that's why the focus is on kind of the lower left, kind of the inset. Basically, the area between, 4th and School Street, and really kind of focusing on those areas right around the immediate shipyard.
We're gonna see some big changes here, very positive changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think just for what it's worth, we've gotten some pretty good calls about the curb appeal program, and people are really
Absolutely.
interested in what's happening here. We've had great turnout in terms of our shipyard itself and the public feedback we've gotten in the design process. And yeah, I think once we get going, we're going to see some monumental changes in this area.
So is the school insured property included?
They're included.
And how does that work? I mean,
So they're included, and they can come in, if the school district owns a lot of surface parking, maybe in the future that would develop. So, I mean, it's coming in now, one, as tax exempt at 0 because the school owns it, but even if the private entity owned it, I mean, it's surface parking, so there's no improvement, so it's a pretty low value.
Okay.
So we try to pick up most every parcel that had a parking lot on it, or is just, as you can see, natural. Just very low values that really doesn't have anywhere to go but up. But churches and schools can be a part of the tax increment district. Yes.
23.
923, talked about a little bit, just kind of come full circle. Legend District, again, proposing that new tax increment district there, primarily as a pay-go district, which will hopefully, like I said, kind of capture the momentum that's going on down in that area there.
Absolutely.
So there you have it. 17.
There you have it.
Okay,
In a nutshell.
18 minutes left.
I recommend we suspend the rules and approve all of them with the amendments that we've already adopted.
So you would like someone to make that motion? Is what you're saying?
Well, we have to have two motions. One, to suspend the rules, first of all, and that we would vote on all of them with the amendments you already made. So that's the first one.
I would do that
Motion by Alder second by Kathy. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we need a motion to do what I just said.
Statement on the nature
Yeah, please.
Well, I'm just asking
Yeah,
a
please.
question.
Yeah, please.
I'm just asking if I need to abstain on the
Oh.
12
Oh.
one that involves nature's way.
Only if there's a direct conflict of interest, and you would have to be receiving some kind of benefit directly from your vote.
And I'm not, so I won't abstain.
Now I entertain a motion to approve all the kid changes with the amendments we have already made.
I'll make that.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we shall vote if we can. Very good. With nothing else on the agenda, anything most,
Just in terms of timing, the state mandates at least 15 days between these resolutions go to council. So these will actually, from tonight, they will go to the September council meeting.
okay.
And then upon that, they will go to a joint review board meeting after that council meeting, sometime between the 17th and 30th. And then with that, the proposed creations would be, and amendments would be effective 1/1 this year. And then the allocations and terminations as specified in the dates.
One other comment, I really want to compliment you, Kevin, and Leanna,
Yes.
for all the work you guys did on this. This is very monumental as far as cleaning up tips and putting us on a good track for the future. So I want to just make compliment you guys on all the hard work you've
Nice
done.
job.
Motion to adjourn, Debbie.
Second.
All in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Broadway walks, groundbreaking at 3 o'clock, so we all got enough time to sit over there.
That's that side.